I'm Caden Love.
And I'm Seema Love, his wife.
And we are Love and Lore, taking dark fantasy, light fantasy, and everything in between.
And today, with the recent release of the Isisles with the Ember, we figured it would be a good time to talk about which books from Brandon Sanderson's world are better to start with if you're trying to get into Cosmere, and which ones not so much.
So, starting off, do not start with Isles of the Emberdark. I think you can take it and enjoy it, but just know that this book is very different from a lot of his books, meaning that this is science fiction. And even though he has written other works of science fiction like Skyward, this is distant future Cosmere. This takes place within his big world, and we have spaceships, intergalactic travel. It is pretty awesome. I enjoyed it a lot, but this, if we're looking at the Sanderson Iceberg, this is pretty low on that. To really grasp all the connections in here, I highly recommend first that you read Tress of the Emerald Sea, the Stormlight Archive, Misborn, especially Misborn Era 2, and most of the Cosmere, because there are tons of fun hints. This one's really enjoyable and I had a lot of fun with it. So, why don't we talk about the books that Seema started with?
Good books to build your Cosmere vocabulary so that when you're reading Isles of the Emberdark, you're actually getting all of these references and Easter eggs. I started with You Mean the Nightmare Painter, and for me, it was a perfect start. It had like some romance in it, so it was a nice transition from romantasy. After that, I read Warbreaker, which was also really nice and romantic, and Misborn.
Yeah, I think these are all great choices to start out with. Similar to how Isles of the Emberdark is a future setting, You Mean the Nightmare Painter does have kind of a modern sense, while most of the Cosmere books have that medieval feeling to it. The only real character you're going to notice between a lot of these is Hoyd, and if you read You Mean the Nightmare Painter and don't know who Hoyd is, you might be a little confused, but it's no big deal, because he is just there as an additive character rather than a central character like he is in Tress of the Emerald Sea. I think Tress is a great entry point as well. We actually got my grandma to start the Cosmere by reading this book, and I've known a lot of people that start with this. Even though he's a central character, you don't need to know everything behind him. He's one of those characters that no matter where you start, it's fun to get to know him. Warbreaker is a perfect start, as is Elantris, Tress, and You Mean the Nightmare Painter, because all of these are one-shots, their own self-contained story, and while if you look really deeply you might see hints at other worlds, they are fine just on their own. But if you look at Isles of the Emberdark, or Misborn Era 2, or the most recent books in the Stormlight Archive, there are plenty of connections to the other worlds. So let's take a step back and talk about Misborn. If you are wanting to jump into the Cosmere, but don't want to start with just a single book and start a series, I cannot recommend Misborn enough. The first trilogy, amazing. You can read the Misborn original trilogy and go on to Era 2 and only read those books and be completely fine. It isn't really until The Lost Metal that the Cosmere really cracks open. There are plenty of connections to other worlds, and this is one of the early predecessors to Tress of the Emerald Sea where it hinted at that world. I think it's fun to notice, too, that before The Lost Metal, the Cosmere connections were all hinted at. They weren't really out in the open as much, but this one felt like I was into Spider-Man No Way Home, where they just showed all of these connections to past things that you loved. This one was super fun, and I feel like this series is very, very important if you are going to read the Stormlight Archive. Go read books 1, 2, even 3 in the Stormlight Archive. You'll be completely fine. But to understand the Ghost Bloods and things connected to them, you definitely want to check this out, as well as Misborn: A Secret History. I won't get into spoilers, but it will make the big reveals in the later books so much more worthwhile.
Would you say that reading Warbreaker too?
Oh, 100%. There are some of the most important characters in Warbreaker do come into the Stormlight Archive. And I will preface that I read the Stormlight books as they came out, and I didn't read Warbreaker until probably after the third Stormlight book. And to go back and reread Stormlight in preparation for Wind and Truth, I then noticed some of the big characters in there. So I feel like definitely want to read Warbreaker before, so that you can notice those Easter eggs later on. And And if we're talking about all of these things, really, all the series can be enjoyed on their own. You don't have to have a full-on knowledge, but Misborn Era 2, the Stormlight Archive, the Sunlit Man, Isles of the Emberdark, I definitely recommend really reaching out and reading a lot of the Cosmere before getting to these. This one, I feel it is best read either between Stormlight Archive book 4 and 5, or after 5 if you want to see directly what leads to this. No spoilers, but this one's really fun. It does definitely have more of a futuristic feel as well.
Well, what about Brandon Sanderson books that are like out of Cosmere and are not related much?
I think there are so many different ways to enjoy Brandon Sanderson. Like I mentioned before, Skyward, unrelated to the Cosmere, it is a fun sci-fi series, more YA, so definitely if you have younger family members or friends that are wanting to get into reading, want sci-fi, it's fun. And even for adults, it's a fun, enjoyable series. I know this book had mixed reviews, but I actually really love Frugal Wizard. This was Secret Project number 2, and I haven't read A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but I've heard it is very similar to this. Full of comedy, it is a portal fantasy, and it is a ton of fun. I loved the audiobook, and now that I have the physical copy, amazing illustrations, super fun. If we're going to talk about books outside the Cosmere, I can't go without mentioning one of my favorite Brandon Sanderson series, unrelated, but it is so underhyped. If you love The Boys, or if you want a different superhero story, you need to check out Steelheart. This is the first book in the Reckoner series. Again, this is tagged as YA, but I feel like it's a step in maturity above Skyward. I loved it so much. Think of the world being run by evil superheroes, and it is about a team of people that research these super villains, I guess they are more so, and take them down, and that is just the start. It might seem a little formulaic to me explaining at the beginning. Oh, this is a sci-fi epic. There are so many great things, and some of my favorite twists in any Sanderson books are in this trilogy. If you haven't heard of the Arcanum Unbounded, highly recommend checking that out. There are plenty of fun Cosmere-related stories in it. This is a collection of Sanderson's short stories, and many of them are actually very important.
So where in the Iceberg is the Arcanum?
I feel like this one has a couple of novellas that can be enjoyed at any point, but you do have Misborn, A Secret History, which you do not want to read until you get into Misborn Era 2, because it really spoils some big points, and there's some things that aren't super important. They're just fun little stories. One of my favorites was Six of the Dusk, which was actually the predecessor to Isles of the Emberdark. Isles of the Emberdark, Sanderson notes at the beginning that this is a sequel to that, and rather than making all his readers go out and find that somewhat obscure novella and read it, even though I loved it, he fills this story in as flashbacks. It works very well, and I didn't feel like I was being bogged down at all. You can go read Six of the Dusk and not have any Cosmere knowledge and really enjoy it, but if you want Isles of the Emberdark, like I said again, refresh your Cosmere knowledge, read other books, then go to this. Okay, let's also talk about one of the most underhyped stories in all of the Cosmere, Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. This one goes to a planet that isn't referenced too much in the Cosmere, but it was noted in the Sunlit Man and actually becomes pretty important, noting the beings on this planet for Isles of the Emberdark. Go and check this one out. It's kind of a play on horror, and it's really fun.
And my favorite novella that I really wanted to mention in this video is The Emperor's Soul.
If you do plan on reading Mistborn Era 2, especially The Lost Metal, highly recommend reading this beforehand because there are connections that you'll appreciate later on. This one, self-contained story, but there are references to it in other books. Another one that isn't talked about too much is White Sand. This is actually a graphic novel. Again, self-contained story, connection to other books. This is worth checking out if you do like graphic novels, but don't feel like you need to so much because Sanderson is currently rewriting this as a novel form, and I'm excited to see how he does it with that.
So here's our recommendation about how to tackle getting into Cosmere. Let us know in the comments if we missed anything, and let us know in the comments if there are any specific videos you'd like us to make, and thank you for watching!